want it to look like we have a 2x6 fascia here. But what's gonna happen, if you can imagine, we're gonna put roof sheathing on the top of this roof here. And if we were to put our fascia board flush with this top line, our sheathing would come down and then it would do like a little ski slope at the end. And we really want to try to avoid that. So what a lot of people do is they'll take a speed square here, run it down along that rafter, and then butt that 2x6 up right to where it connects with the sheathing. That's more than fine if you have like a 412 or 512 pitch, but anything over like a 512 pitch, I like to put the bevel on the fascia board. And the reason why we do that, once we put our sheathing on top of here, one, we need to nail the edge of our sheathing, and there's nothing here. We got this little chunk that's missing here. There's nothing to nail our sheathing to, so over time, we'll kind of get a little bit of a wavy line there with the edge of our sheathing. Second, we have a drip cap or drip edge that's going on the front of our roof here. And if there's nothing here to nail that to, that can eventually start to fall off, and it's just not good news. So what we've done is we've gotten one size bigger than a 2x6, and we've put in the pitch of the roof on the top here. So if you measure the front, we got pretty close to 5.5 inches, which is the width of a 2x6. So once it's on here, and once the drip edge is on here, it's gonna look like a 2x6. But now we have all this extra meat here to be able to nail the edge of that roof sheathing and have a nailing surface for our drip edge. So what Azad has done, if you remember, these are just our common rafters. We still have to put on our fly rafters or make an overhang for our gable ends yet. So what we're gonna do here, we've run our ridge beam a foot long, and we're also gonna run our fascia a foot long. That way we can connect our fly rafters, which is pretty much the same thing as a common rafter, again, just without the bird's mouth. We'll be able to connect it at the top and the bottom, and then we'll put some blocking in later. But we need to do a reference line, and on the back here, we have, can't quite see it, I'm in the way here. Let's bring it around. We measured in 1 foot from the end and made a reference mark, and we know that this is our first location for our common rafter here. That gives us the proper overhang, so we can still have some support to nail our fly rafter. Azad has a mark down there, and we'll go ahead and start to lift this up in place. Now before we lift this into place, it's important again, just like when we were screwing down our mud sills and when we were screwing down our top plates, we want to go from one end to the other. We don't want to nail this end, nail that end, and then have to try to maneuver this middle to be flush, be perfectly flush, because it's going to be a lot harder. Azad can work on that end, moving that board up and down as I nail along this, and it's just going to go a lot easier using that leverage. So we'll go ahead and begin to put this in place. I'm going to grab a nail here, and then I'm going to sight over the back of our board and line up our 1 foot mark. And I don't have to be perfect quite yet, but I'm going to hold it and also get a nail started here. Maybe. All right. Okay, got that started. I'm gonna get lined up with our edge again. And I'm just gonna go so it just comes through. And I'm gonna double check that we're on our layout mark, and then I'm gonna double check that our top of our fascia board is right in line with the top, or the top edge of our rafter here. All right, we look pretty good there. I'll drive it home, and then you can see if we take a rafter square here, speed square, When we sight down this, we have a perfectly smooth transition from rafter to fascia board, and we have all this nailing surface for our roof sheathing. So I got that tacked in place. I'm not going to completely nail it off yet, but I'm going to go along here and go every board, and we'll have Azad lift the board up and down into place, and I'll tack these off. You want to go down just a little bit. All right. And again, we know we've took a lot of time cutting all these rafters, and we took a lot of time leveling our wall, getting it straight. Okay, with our fascia board in place, we are now ready to hang our fly rafters. So you can see now we have our ridge beam overhanging a foot. We have our fascia board overhanging a foot. We're going to keep our 1 foot overhang for our gable end wall here. So basically this is real simple. We're just going to put this in place. And again, our top of our rafter here is going to sit nice and flush with the top of our ridge beam here. And Azad's going to make the top of the rafter down there flush with the top of our fascia board, so we have that nice continuous slope going there. So we're going to do 3 nails up here, 3 nails down there, and we'll get this in place. Just to reiterate here, it's really important. This is basically going to be our finished surface here. We have some aluminum fascia that's going to go over this. But we really want to take our time to get our edges nice and flush here and get our edges nice and flush there, because if we have any gaps or uneven surfaces, that's going to pick up in our aluminum fascia. So we want to kind of treat this like it's finished work. Okay, so we got our fly rafters in place. We got our blocking in place on those fly rafters, every 2 foot on center. Everything is nailed off, and we are ready to start our sheathing process. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to give ourselves a layout line for our roof sheathing. It's just a double precaution here. We know our fascia is pretty straight, but we're actually going to push our roof sheathing up from our fascia just a little bit so it doesn't overhang. So we want to give ourselves a really clean line to go off of. So again, our roof sheathing is 4x8. We're going to use 5/8 OSB. You shouldn't use anything less than 5/8 thickness for your roof sheathing. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to come up 48 1/2 inch to make sure we have enough clearance so we don't overhang our front. So AJ has measured up from the fascia 48 1/2. I've done the same, and we're going to snap a line. Looking good. Alrighty. All right. So now on every common roof rafter here, we have a solid chalk line. And we really want to take our time with this first row to make sure that we bring that sheet all the way up to this chalk line. So a good practice, as long as you really take your time and get this first row straight, the rest of your roof is going to go pretty effortless. If you don't get this first row straight and you have a couple sheets that are kind of zigzagging on you, even just like a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch is really going to throw you off on the rest of the roof. This is a pretty small roof, but if you had, let's say, a 40-foot long roof and maybe a 20-foot run, and if you're off an 1/8 inch on your first row, that's going to magnify up to about a 1/2 inch all the way at the top. So the more time you spend on this first row getting it extra perfect, the better the rest of your roof is going to go. So AJ and I are going to get down here on our scaffold, and then we'll be ready to put our first sheet up. Okay, so again, our first sheet here is 4x8, and if you remember, our common rafters are laid out 2 foot on center. But we added on these fly rafters here, so our layout is a little bit thrown off, but that's okay. We'll just cut our first sheet. And if you want to, you can go ahead and take a measurement. You can hook on the end here. AJ will run the tape out, and he'll find out where his 8 foot mark is. So 8 foot actually lands in between those 2 bays right there. So he's gonna come back to the next rafter and find what the middle of that rafter is.
83 3/4.
All right, we got 83 3/4 there. So what we could do is we could take that sheet and cut it right on the ground, and then bring it up and put it in place. If you're gonna do that, make sure that you take your measurement from your factory edge. So whenever we land a sheet on the middle of a roof rafter here, we want to make sure that we always put our factory edges on there, because our factory edges are nice and straight, they're nice and square, and that's going to help us to keep the rest of the roof square. We'll use that as a reference for our next sheet coming up. Make sure that you take your measurements off of that, and then you can put your cut edge out here where there's nothing butting up to it, and if you're off just a little bit, it's not going to hurt anything. The second method that we can do is we can just bring up a full sheet and let it hang off, overhang the end here, and then we'll actually come back with the chalk line and just sight down the fly rafter, snap a line, and make one straight cut. And there's no measuring, there's no accidentally taking an inch off your tape measure. It's just a much more accurate way and fast way to do it. So we'll show that to you when we get there. So we're gonna go ahead and bring up a full sheet here. Okay, got the bottom. All right, so we have it up here, and you can see our side over there is overhanging our rafter. So we want to have AJ bring this sheet this way, and he's going to tell me to move it left or right until we are right in the center of that rafter.
Right there, it's pretty good on the top.
Looking good? Okay. Now AJ is going to bring his corner up to that line. I'll bring my corner up to my line. Looking good, and I'll hold it in place while he puts a tack in the bottom. Okay, he'll double check that top up there. Can you see that line? Looking good?
Looking good.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, bring mine up to place. Looks good right there. Now before I tack my end, oops, slid down just a little bit. Before I tack my end, AJ wants to double check his rafter there to make sure that this sheet is exactly in the center. How we looking?
Looks good.
All right, so AJ, you wanna come to the middle and hold this sheet? Still looking good on our line. And I'm gonna come down here and tack my corner. Right there. There we go. And I'm gonna stay back from this edge here because we have to come back a little bit later and cut the sheet off. Looking good. All right. So now our sheet is in place. We're gonna come along here, just double check our lines. Looks like we're good. And then I'm gonna tack it right in the middle here, just for the time being.